Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are unpacking a really wild geopolitical drama. We're talking about a standoff over the world's largest island, a pretty shocking threat, and an even more shocking last-minute U-turn. Let's get right into it.
So, picture this. Just before the world's most powerful people gathered in Davos for their annual summit, Donald Trump just drops this bombshell on social media. And the message? It was incredibly aggressive. He was set on taking control of Greenland, and he wasn't afraid to use force to do it.
And, this wasn't just some casual post. When he actually got to Davos, he doubled down. He told journalists he was ready to take Greenland by hook or by crook. This put European leaders on super high alert and, you can imagine, created a ton of tension.
But then, poof, it all just vanished. The threats, the aggressive posture, all gone. Which brings us to the real mystery we're digging into today. What on earth happened behind the scenes that could cause such a massive, sudden reversal?
Okay, so let's start breaking this down. The first piece of the puzzle, and honestly, maybe the most important one, was how Europe reacted. They basically drew a line in the sand and said, nope, not happening.
You had major players like Ursula von der Leyen stepping up and leading a truly united front. And this wasn't just talk. We're talking about 8 NATO allies, including heavyweights like the UK, France, and Germany, all publicly standing with Denmark. They even sent some symbolic military support up to the Arctic. The message couldn't have been clearer. An attack on one of us is an attack on all of us.
And that solid wall of opposition? Well, it completely changed the dynamic at Davos. You could feel the shift almost immediately, and it led to a huge change in Trump's tone.
I mean, the contrast is just night and day. He went from being ready to use force to saying there was no military action planned. The language of coercion was suddenly replaced with talk of cooperation and working with NATO. The entire game had changed.
Now, even as he was backing down, he couldn't resist getting in one last jab. He publicly taunted Denmark, basically reminding them of their history in World War II and America's role as a protector. It was a classic move to save face, but for everyone listening, the real message was clear. The immediate threat was off the table.
So, let's get back to that core question. What were the powerful forces that actually caused this U-turn? It turns out it wasn't just about one thing, but a combination of some very serious realities on the ground.
There are really 4 key factors that forced his hand. Let's break them down one by one, starting with the one that probably hit closest to home for the U.S. economy. All right, first up, something called the bazooka. And yeah, the name fits. This was a massive trade deal in the works between the U.S. and the EU, worth about $350 billion in American exports every single year. So, a pretty huge deal for American businesses. So as tensions were rising, Trump pulled out his favorite tool, tariffs. He threatened a 10% tariff on all goods coming from the EU. But this time, Europe had its own weapon ready to fire back. They threatened to kill that $350 billion bazooka deal. They essentially called his bluff.
And guess who blinked? The economic fallout of losing that deal was just too great. Trump immediately announced the tariffs were canceled. Just like that. The economic pressure worked, big time.
But on top of the economic risk, his advisors were probably warning him about a looming geopolitical disaster. If you bully a key ally, you don't just alienate them, you risk pushing all of Europe away and potentially right into the arms of rivals like Russia and China. That would be a huge blow to American influence.
And then there was an even bigger problem, a threat that could have torn the world's most powerful military alliance apart right from the inside.
Okay, so the absolute core of NATO is Article 5. It says that an attack on one member is an attack on all of them. Since Greenland is Danish territory and Denmark is a founding member of NATO, a U.S. attack would have triggered Article 5. That would have created an impossible, absurd scenario where NATO allies would be obligated to defend Denmark against the United States. The alliance would have effectively destroyed itself.
So, you've got this economic pressure cooker, a geopolitical nightmare, and the potential collapse of NATO. The situation was getting really tense, and that's when a very clever diplomatic off-ramp was put on the table. It was called the Golden Dome Proposal, and it was pretty brilliant. The deal was simple. America gets what it strategically wants to build military bases and a missile defense system on Greenland. But, and this is the key, the sovereignty of Greenland remains with Denmark, and security would be managed through NATO. It gave Trump a strategic win he could point to without the catastrophic political fallout. It was the perfect face-saving way out.
So with the immediate crisis over, the tariffs gone, and a deal in place,
What does this all mean? What's the big takeaway for Greenland, and maybe for the global balance of power?
Well, the short answer is that for now, Greenland is safe. And this whole episode was a powerful reminder that a united Europe still has enormous political and economic leverage, enough to counter even the most aggressive moves from the US.
But it does leave us with one last lingering question. Was this whole Greenland saga just a one-off diplomatic win for Europe, or is it maybe a sign of something bigger, a real shift in the global balance of power, where America can no longer act entirely on its own without facing serious consequences? It's definitely something to think about.